Right? Okay, so he said,
I think it's because of Mincha is making it difficult for people. From next week, it's going to change. Always I want to see what they're offering me. No, I haven't actually. Have you had it?
I had one.
And how did it go?
I had my job. It was like big news.
Which one?
How did it go?
Yes, I don't know.
How are you? How you feeling? You okay? Yeah, Kevin Hartman is on to you.
you are one of the 1 in 1 million people who have had a blood clot, are you?
The 20 other people who got knocked over by a bus as well.
Sorry?
The 20 other people got knocked over by a bus.
What are the statistics?
1 in 1 million. There are 38 million.
The problem is, how many people have blood clots?
30 odd people.
Hello, do you know how many people
Can I
have?
ask you a question? How many? What's in blood clot normally? How many people have a blood clot?
Probably a lot more than 1 in 1 million.
No.
The thing is linked to it. So,
It's linked what? So, but the people that haven't had the jab and have had a blood clot. What do you mean? There must have been someone that had this. You know, stomach issues. So it's linked to stomach. I'm sure.
How did you get the job? What excuse did you have?
No excuse. Doesn't need excuse.
Well, what are you doing essentially? How?
We worked in care homes before.
Where?
I mean, at the time, I've actually got on the job.
How far did you have to travel to get the job? How far is that?
15 minutes, 15 minutes. But from the big house.
Where's the big house?
I love wasting everyone's money. Apart from the fact when you email the MP, he sends you back a letter and thick, heavy paper, and you're doing 100 letters a day. And I thought, I sent a message back saying, I don't want to see that because it's costing me X amount of money. Apart from that, you go there and you got one dentist, take your information, and you walk around, you've got 15 people directing you where to go, and then you get to another dentist. And you get
15 minutes from here.
the whole thing again.
Yeah, 15 minutes from here.
Basically.
You only got 2 new members to your share tonight.
Cool. Okay, boys. I'm sorry to trouble you. Do you mind?
You can join the share. You can join.
And then there's another 15 people to direct you to the booth where you get jab.
And what did you do? What on your arm?
Yeah.
They're not giving
That is whack.
Moish had it somewhere else.
Right.
There's a COVID.
8 o'clock. 8 o'clock. Wait,
8 o'clock, right.
This country
On to the dogs. Trying to get it back from Europe.
We're up to Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, 20 lines from the top. We're discussing the stream of water that flowed. Okay, so about 20.
I think it's 21 when I counted.
Oh, yeah?
When I put up the group.
Thank you.
It was a good guess.
20.
Ksiv, 21. Oh, very good.
No.
We're talking about the stream of water that goes from the Beis Hamikdash when Mashiach comes and it will spread around the world. It is very interesting that I looked in the Malbim. Yes, we'll continue with yesterday's stream of water. I look at the Malbim, and the Malbim very beautifully describes different explanations as what is the idea of this stream of water. And he says an idea which is very, very valuable. He says, well, the Pasuk tells us that when Mashiach comes, the world will be filled with knowledge, just like water covers the sea. You want to hear this unbelievable malbim? When you look at the sea, it looks like it is flat, and it looks like it's quite, and it looks like there's the same amount of water in one place as there's another place. But the reality is that in certain places it's very, very deep, and certain places it's very shallow.
It's all the same level.
It's all the same level. When the Mashiach comes, the world will be covered in water, meaning with knowledge of Hashem like water covers the earth. Meaning that it will look like everybody has knowledge of Hashem. But some people have a lot of knowledge and some will have less. How much will it depend? What will it depend on? It will depend on how far you've dug. Meaning, the amount that a person yearns to have the knowledge of Hashem and therefore makes himself like a vessel to accept the knowledge of Hashem, that's how much knowledge of Hashem he will have. And that is the mashal, he says, of this stream of water. He says on this pasuk that what will happen is the water will flow out and fill the earth with knowledge of Hashem like the sea, but it will depend on the depths of a person's desire. And let's carry on the pasuk inside. Ksiv, the pasuk says, water will flow in our cost of Aimonis Pseisish Kode with Kav Yodi had a measuring rod in his hand, but Yod Elef Ba'am by Bring Ba'maim, me'afosim ad kasulo. 1,000 amos from the Beis Hamikdash, the water will reach the ankles. But Yom Elef, if you measured another 1,000 amos, they have Yireini b'mayim, may Birkaim ad Birkai will get to the knees. Another 1,000 amos will get to, first 1,000 amos will get to the ankles, another 1,000 amos will get to the knees. By Yom Elef Yireini, may Musnaim ad Musnai, another 1,000 amos will get to the waist. מכאן ואילך, ויום אלף נחלה שלא יוכל לבוא אפילו לבירונים גדולים, אין יוכל לבוא בוי. Another 1,000 amos, the stream will be so big, the river will be with such a strong current, the biggest ship in the world will not be able to cross it. Can you imagine such a thing? Wow. This little stream that started off like the width, the size of the antennae of a locust, will become a river so big that even the greatest ship can't cross it. My Tana, as the Apostle says, the more used the word shochut means from swimming. Shochut, we can more get two proofs that shochut and swimming is the same thing. Normally, it doesn't matter how deep water is, you can swim. Children, I like to swim in the lakes, right? So what happens, she'll say it's very, very deep. It doesn't make any difference how deep it is, the danger of the water. You can always swim. What does make a danger? The currents. The currents, but the depths of the water makes the size difference. If you're 1,000 meters, nothing to do. As if not necessarily. Are they? So the point is like this: so the water will be unswimmable because the current will be so big, and that will be stoop sukkah that shchia is the same thing. Be'aseh now town call it shaita swimming shachuna. They call it shachuna. The pasuk there is describing how Hashem will destroy Moav. He'll stretch out his hand like somebody swimming. When you're swimming, you stretch out your hand. So Hashem will stretch out his hand like a swimmer to destroy Moav. Ma'u lishchos. Pasuk says again lishchos. Oma b'yisi be'abun mayand v'svalin in be'alma. Water which they'll speak about in the world. Lishchos comes to the word sichu. Hodu Hashem kudosh v'yodu v'aminosav. Sichu b'chol nifla'osav. Talk about the wonders of Hashem. So schia comes to the word of talking. Lishchos. It's udashing. It's lishchos. You're right, but it's udashing. It's with the shin, but udashing is as if it's lishchos. They probably got it from this Gemara, I dare say. Actually, here it is with the lishchos, with the sin. You just see, yeah, so with the sin, lishchos, right? So the point is like this ancient thing, that this water will be water they'll talk about it around the world. There are two explanations. What's so special about this water they'll talk about around the world? One explanation is that a very thin stream suddenly becomes into a raging river. But another explanation is, the Gemara later is going to tell us that the water that comes out of the Beis Hamikdash will have very strong health properties. Those that can't talk will have a sip of water, be able to talk, etc., etc. So therefore, people will talk about the wonders of this stream around the world. That this water will be good for chatos is para aduma, for the sprinkle of para aduma, or nidor is for unus and nidor. V'shuma nachman shem no yenis me beis tov dad yishu shleim kshem lenidor lechatos. Mikam elech mitavuvis heim kshem lenidor psulim lechatos. Or blaz beis tov dad yishu shleim kshem lenidor belechatos. Kam elech mikatvisos heim psulim lenidor belechatos. The point is like this: the pasuk over here tells us that there will only be kosher for the people in Yerushalayim. And the Gemara is bothered. How can you have water which is good for the people in Yerushalayim, but not for anybody else? I've ever heard of a mikveh. It's only kosher for such certain inhabitants. It doesn't make any sense. If it's a kosher mikveh, it's kosher for everybody. If it's not kosher for anybody at all. So the Gemara over here explains that it depends where the water is as how kosher it is. And the Gemara explains it's dependent on where the water is, like this. Let's go very deep. The halacha is that for Poa Aduma water, which kind of water do you need? Anybody know? Spring water. For Nidda to Tovel, what do you need? Either spring water or rainwater. You don't need both. There's one fundamental halacha though, that if you use rainwater, you have to be very careful. Does anybody know? Very good. Yeah. That it's still water. For example, let's say you go to the Lake District and your wife is a person is going to mikveh, etc. So if it's going to a river, right, a proper river, which is all year round, a spring river, so it doesn't matter if it moves. But if it's rainwater, then the halacha is you can only do it if it's still. You have to make it in a still in a bowl. So more explains like this: the water will come out of the Beis Hamikdash. It will be, what will it be? It will be Mayim Chai. It will be spring water. So it can be used for Poa Aduma and for Niddah. But later, As it gets further and further, rainwater gets mixed in. Since rainwater gets mixed in, so what would the halacha be? It would be no longer considered spring water, be rainwater. Now, rainwater is not good for Po'ah Adumas. You can't use it for rainwater. You can't use it for niddah. Sorry, you can't use it for Bechatas, can't use it for Po'ah Adumah. Can't use it for niddah. Here the mobbing is a machlokes. One Madama says, yes, you can use it for niddah, because since the majority of the water is spring water, the fact that there's a bit of rainwater is okay. And Madama says, no, you can't use it even for niddas, because since rainwater is no good when it's flowing, and this will be flowing water, so it'll be no good. So machlokes, everybody agrees that at the beginning of the stream it will be good for Po'ah Adumah. Later in the stream, it will not be good for Po'ah Adumah. The machlokes says later in the stream, will it be good for niddah or not? That's a machlokes in the one.
The water falls from rain into the stream.
Yes.
That becomes immediate stream water. Or is that
It depends if it's a majority. That means if a majority of the, if most of the water, that's right. The word says, for example, that certain times of the year, some rivers will become majority rainwater. Some times of the year, the majority is.
So the river Yehuda, which eventually does fill up from rainwater, not correct.
Yes, this is a very good question.
Don't do that. Don't go.
I do.
For that.
Why it's dirty?
Yeah.
Very dangerous.
Come up with some
But it's a
trolleys.
good question. It's a good question. No, it's a very important question. Well, it's not so straightforward. Put it this way, because the point is, how much of it is spring water, how much of it is rainwater?
What's considered stream water? Groundwater?
Groundwater, yes.
Where does groundwater come from?
No, and I argued about this when I voice again. There is such a thing as spring water. You go up in the mountains. That's right.
All the water is
Let's go to Bucks.
It's rainwater. It's not. It's not. I once went to South Wales. We climbed some mountain. It was quite high. Well, South Wales, what's the mountain there called? I can't remember. No, that's from North Wales. Rebecca Beacons got very high, and suddenly from the floor you could see a proper stream of water. There was no mountains above it. That's a spring water. No, because many streams nowadays in England it rains a very, very lot. And sometimes it's most of it is rainwater.
Does that not become a stream though afterwards?
No.
Because they're not gathered down underground.
The stream water has to be moving. Has to come from the ground.
That's right.
It's
Otherwise,
very hard. It's very hard.
yeah, they are to find things. But you may like.
Yes, you can't make it.
Yeah.
You're on holiday. You need to use
So you need to make a pit, or you can use the sea. The sea is okay.
How do you make
It
it?
doesn't work.
Make a pit. You have to make a hole in the ground, which is 40 saw. Make the water come in, and then once it's still.
Oh, wow.
Oh, now another thing about this water was the special water came from Beis Hamikdash. It spread around the whole of Eretz Yisrael. How many rivers? How many seas are there around Eretz Yisrael?
3.
The Gemara counts quite a few. One of them is the Mediterranean. Next one is the Kinneret. It's called the Sea of Tver. It's called the sea. The Yam Malach. And the Chula. The Chula nowadays has been made dried up, but there used to be a huge river, a huge sea, about 15 miles north of Tveria, which was the Chula. They dried it up, and then they realized it wasn't such a good idea to dry it up. And that's the Gemara says that what happens is the water from the Beis Hamikdash will spread to all of them. The Gemara then asks, Bishlam, it will spread to the sea and the Dead Sea. That's necessary because they can't be drinkable. And once the water Beis Hamikdash will come into there or transfer to make it drinkable. But the Tveria water, it doesn't need more water. It's already got water there. The Gemara answers because the water of the Beis Hamikdash will make it a highly fertile water, and fish will be able to flourish there on a much greater level. First it says, that's Now, why is Yam HaGodah called Yam HaMoitzim? Moitzim means to move, to come out, moitza, to take something out. The idea is that twice that Sea of Mediterranean came out, in Doi Enosh and Doi Afloga. We don't know about it because the Torah doesn't say about it. In Doi Enosh, that's the third generation of creation, and in Doi Afloga, the Mediterranean came and swept large parts of the Middle East. It says, well, the first time I went to Calabria, the second time to Babaria. The more brings different places where the Mediterranean swept to, which now is very hard to place where these places are. And the more explains at Poisov at Akotovo. The word poi means here. Koi can also mean here. So the pasuk says ad poi can mean echo because at the end of the day, poi and koig is similar words. For poi yoshes begoin galecho ad yafo, the word poi can also mean yafo. Oshes going galecho. So God says nicha yamo rabba yamo de melcha b'shul maskot making it sweet. Yamo tvev yamo de samchul and small. The rabba is to gosam to make the fish increase. The chsib bein the minot te de gosam. Le minim te de gosam. There'll be many species of fish. Todim shugam leo ma'aser shalachted it Sidon. That once inside on we're up to now the second of the middle lines of this page, second of the middle lines. What happened was they went to a place called Sidon, and they gave him in one pot 300 different kinds of fish. And nowadays we don't have so many different kinds of fish in one river. The answer is because the time of Beis Hamikdash, the water of Beis Hamikdash created a situation where the water would have a very lot of ability. The pasuk says on one hand the water will be healed, meaning it will be sweet and tasty, and then the pasuk says it will not be healed, which is a contradiction. The water not being healed is also got a purpose. What's the purpose of salty water got? Dry it out, get salt. But it's a contradiction. Will the water be salty and get salt, or will it be sweet and you can drink it? Well, the one answer is parts of the water will be sweet and parts of it will be salty to have both health combinations. There'll be one place where it will be not, will be salty, and another place will be sweet. On the river banks will grow all kinds of fruit trees. The leaves will never dry out. The fruit will never finish. There'll be new fruit every month. Nowadays, it takes 6 months for grain to grow and 12 months for fruit to grow. That means you get a fruit once a year, and produce you can get twice a year in theory. Grain will grow 1 month, and the fruit trees will grow in 2 months. Lechadoshav is plural. To its months, it will ripen, or ripen to its months. So there's the one's going to be another explanation. Let's go through each explanation carefully. To its months it will ripen means every 2 months fruit will ripen. That's the plural, every 2 months. To its months it will ripen. Another way to understand it is every single month it will ripen. Why does it say it in plural? Because every single month a new fruit will grow. So to its months it will ripen, to every single month it will ripen. 15 days. What happened was the days of Yehuda, Christ was doing a lot of averos. They did tshuva, so Hashem gave them an abundant crop. After years of famine, a huge crop grew. But they only did tshuva on Chodesh Nisan. Chodesh Nisan is already the end of the produce growing of the year, because we usually bring the new produce on the 15th of Nisan. Hashem made a tremendous miracle that beginning from Chodesh Nisan to the 15th of Nisan, all the produce grew. In fact, the Gemara in Tanya says that the person would drop the seeds into the ground and then have a cow pulling along to cover it with soil, and the person following behind the cow would see the seeds already sprouting. That's how quick it grew in those 15 days. The world brings a remiss to this. The pasuk says, "By time they see him, rejoice with Hashem. Hashem will give you the rain for good, for light, for charity. We know that there's 2 kinds of rain. Yovel Makish. What's Yovel mean?
It's rain, isn't it?
Yeah, but which rain is it? Yovel is the first rains of the season. Makish is the last. And over here the pasuk says Hashem will give you Moira or Malkish Pavishon. In the first month of the year, which is Nisan, you will get Moira and Malkish. That's the first and last rain. That happened in the days of Yoel, that Hashem brought all the rain, the first and last, all within one small time period. Every single month, a new crop of fruit will grow. So this river, we've learned that it will go very, very big in a very short distance from the Beis Hamikdash. It starts as a hair, literally, and within a few thousand amos, it's so wide and so turbulent that no ship can cross it. It will have fruit on its side, which will grow every month or every 2 months, produce that will grow every 15 days, and it will make all the fish abundant. it will make all the seeds that can't be drunk will be able to be drunk. And now the Gemara says one more thing. What else would it? A couple more things. That if you suck the leaves, you'll be sustained. The leaves of the trees growing on the banks of this river will be so nutritious that eating a leaf will make you completely full. It will open the mouth of on top. It's the lower mouth, the mouth below. The different explanations. The mouth above means those that can't talk, eating the produce which will grow on the banks of this river will make people who cannot talk be able to talk. The other Badama says, or make the lower mouth. It's two different explanations that are showing him. Either those who have constipation will be able to relieve themselves if they eat these leaves. Others is referring to those who can't have children will be able to have children. But these leaves will have tremendous powers. And the more now brings another machik which is very similar. To open the mouth of those who are not able to have children. Not to have those who can't talk. Okay. Since we mentioned our Mishnah, the gate of Yechonya escaped from the Nebuchadnezzar, we talked about that in the Nebuchadnezzar. At the Beis of Nebuchadnezzar, they came and the Nebuchadnezzar came into Eretz. He sat on the outskirts of Antuchya. The Sanhedrin came out towards him. Are you coming to destroy the Beis HaMikdash? This was 11 years before the Churban. That king, which was Yechonya, give him to me, I'll go. Just give me the king and I'll go. Nebuchadnezzar wants you. He took the keys of the Beis HaMikdash. He stood on the rooftop of the Beis HaMikdash. Till now we're faithful to you. You gave us the keys. Now that you no longer trust us, your keys are given over to you. That Yechonya threw the keys into the air and they never fell down. The hand came out from Shemaim, but not lost them. Took the keys out of his hands. A big nest happened, and it's very interesting because the Gemara Gittin tells us exactly the same story, except two differences. One is that it happened at the Churban, not by Yochid, which was 11 years difference. Another difference is that the Gemara says it was the Koyanim, not the king. But either way, the same story, that they threw the keys upwards, and Akshbaruch Hu took the keys away. Gemara said, Kivan Shavo, call, top of Yudzadim base, top line, when all the princes of Yehuda saw this, all the Luishkaku say and Vanofu, they committed suicide, they threw themselves off the roof. Now, I try to make this a bit more practical. There's a whole similar Shulchan Aruch that somebody has to commit suicide. Terrible Avera, and also doesn't get buried in the normal place, don't do a spade and all the rest. The Beis Ephraim, famous Beis Ephraim Margulis, who lived about 250 years ago, says that from this Gemara to Raya, that you're allowed to commit suicide when you're under emotional distress. Because these princes of Yehuda, what did they do? What happened? Again, let's get it clear. Yechonya threw the keys to Shemaim. The keys were taken away. They all stood on the rooftops, jumped off, and killed themselves.
It's not the only time the kids jumped into the river.
That was different. That was because to save yourself from Aveva. I thought you'd be Mariah from Chana, the 7 sons. Chana committed suicide. Yeah, after the 7 sons were killed, Chana jumped off the roof. What? Why? No, I'm sorry. I'm not yet published Hashem, so that's done. Anyway, no, what's very interesting is we don't pass the Beis Ephraim. Bischet Shuvah brings the Beis Ephraim, argues about it. Every so often, unfortunately, there's suicide. And every single time there is, what they do is they do a normal kavur and all the rest. Because nowadays, very few people have the guts to be able, and we say that people were honest.
People did it.
That's different.
Okay,
no, again,
it is a big halachic topic. There being a raya, this is one of the places where we see that sometimes, not condoned, it's not the wrong word, but at least it is like, the Bischet Shuvah says, how do you know that that's a Bischet Shuvah right? Yes, he said no. His argument is that the ministers of Yehuda would have been Rishonim. Okay. Hodo Dichsev, the world brings a pasuk to support this. Masagei Chazon is a vision. Malach Eifek Yolisa Koloch Legag went to the roof. Truis Meneris here in Moyo. Here the Gemara does again something which you find difficult. The Gemara brings a pasuk to support the story, but if you look at the pasuk, there's hardly anything to support it. It's only the continuation of the pasuk which the Gemara doesn't bring. What the Gemara assumes is that you will know the continuation of the pasuk, and therefore you'll understand the proof from the continuation. What's the continuation of the pasuk say? The continuation of the pasuk says, "Chalolayich, your dead people, are not those killed by the sword, and not those killed in battle." But if they weren't killed by sword, they weren't killed by battle, so how were they killed? The answer is they killed themselves. So it's from the end of the pasuk that we see a proof that the people killed themselves. Okay. Says the Mishnah, Yud Gimel Shechamim Mikdash, there were 13 tables of Beis Hamikdash. Shmoya Shel Shaish Beis Hamikdash, there were 8 marble tables in the middle of the Azar, where it was by the shechting places, Shalem Adichnes HaKovayim, that they would wash off the intestines. They would have to wash off the intestines, and you wanted to use marble. Anybody want to know why didn't they use gold or metal?
Why is that?
Very good, it stays cold. Marble stays cold, and therefore keeps the meat from going moldy or it is off. So therefore they would rinse the intestines on shaish. Beis kevesh, they would put 2 on the western side of the ramp, one of marble, one of silver. On the marble one, they put all the limbs till they put on the mizbeach. Every day they would come to Beis Hamikdash, and they would set up 93 different kelim, one of the kinnis and Tisha B'Av. Right? I don't need to put a plug in the book. This kinnis already exists. Unfortunately, people struggle to understand what we say. But the fact is, in one of the kinnis, it describes all the kelim Beis Hamikdash. And there it says there were 93 different kelim. And what happened was, they would put it on the silver table that they should all be ready. Like sometimes you go to a bris, Levi, right? What do? You take a small table, you put all the instruments out, so they should be ready. So they had that for the commandments. Every week they would change over the lechem haponim. So what they would do is they would come into the Beis Hamikdash, they would have on the table 12 loaves. They would go up first and bake another 12 loaves, put the 12 loaves on the marble table, and then take the 12 loaves of the Beis Hamikdash off, and then put the other 12 loaves on. They would slide them off. So there was a table which was made out of marble and a table made out of gold. Now there's a concept of malim b'kodesh ve'mevidin. You always go up and up. You don't want to go down. So therefore, first they put them on marble, then they would transfer it to the shulchan of gold. But then the last week's bread, where did they put the last week's bread? On a gold table. Why did they put it on a marble table? Because malim b'kodesh. Now that it's been on the gold table a week, you're not going to put it on a lower table on marble. So echad shashaish leisei lechem haponim kisisas v'ashazov etzios shvat b'kodesh v'mevidin. Echad shazov b'fnim, one table inside all of lechem haponim tamid which constant lechem haponim. So even though if you read parshas for Yaakov Pekut and all these parshas is mashma, there was only one table. In fact, there were 13 tables all around the Beis Hamikdash, 8 to clean them the intestines, 2 next to the mizbeach, one for the kelim, one for the limbs till you put on the mizbeach, and another 2 and one for the main one, plus 2 for the lechem haponim on the way in and way out. Tony Ashav Kesef, the Beis says they didn't put the lechem haponim on marble; they put the lechem haponim on silver. That means they would do silver, gold. It says about less cancel Kesef. It wasn't silver. They won't put the lechem haponim on silver because silver, as Levi said, heats things up. If you got hot, fresh baked bread and you put on the silver table, the heat will make it hotter. And then what will happen is lechem haponim will get moldy, and then you'll end up without good lechem haponim. So therefore, you put it on a marble. For the Gemara, I don't understand. Who cares if it gets hot? What's the Gemara's kasha going to be? Very good. It was anyway a nest. So what difference does it make? Anyway, it was 9 days old. Just like they put it down warm. The bread was as fresh when they took it off as when they put it on. We don't mention miracles. Miracles are not something we rely on. You do your best, and therefore you used to use marble, not silver. Now, let's say no, because you've got a problem with Kodesh from Meridin. So no, okay, but then you must remember they kind of ate it very shortly afterwards. They ate on Shabbos. Now, every week they'd get new loaves of bread. Now, most korbanos, there's a concept called the lina. What's lina? Overnight, it becomes possible. Lechem haponim, it can't become possible overnight because the bread was there for a whole week. But once it was there overnight, that means over 8 days, it became possible because of lina, right? That means if you left the lechem aponim over Shabbos and you never transferred to a new set of lechem aponim, then it would become lina. So the Gemara's question is like this: let's say you didn't have any more fresh bread. You kind of did not manage to bake fresh bread. What would you say? What's better? Take the bread off that it shouldn't be lina and eat it, and then there'll be no bread on the lechem aponim for another whole week. Or alternatively, leave the bread there and you'll have puzzle bread on the table for the rest of the week. That is the shaila which the Gemara asks. It says the word like this. They ask, if there's no bread, should you just leave the bread for the next week? Even puzzle breads. So you put even puzzle bread, so you leave it there all week. So if you've got no fresh bread, you just leave the puzzle bread. Now, next Gemara is a whole Gemara Menachos, but it argues vehemently with the Gemara Menachos. And we're going to stick to Shekalim, even though the Gemara Menachos doesn't agree with it, so we pass that more. We all know that inside the Beis Hamikdash there was a table and a menorah, right? Northern side there was the Shulchan, on the southern side was the menorah, right? In fact, it's brought down that if you want to become very wealthy, when you daven Shemona Esrei, you should face north. That means east and northeast, because the Shulchan was in the north. If you want to become a Talmid Chacham, you should face southeast. I remember I once used to learn by a certain Rav. I was very nice, but he used to shocker like this, Jewish Pedes. And somebody said he wants to get both. He wants to get Torah and wealth. What? Anyway, Levaisa, that is the joke we used to say. I know, not very nice, but Levaisa, again, the point is the Shulchan was in the north, the menorah was in the south. Is that clear? Now, one of the very strange things that Shem HaMelech did was, besides for the Shulchan and the menorah that was already there, and besides for the Shulchan that's mentioned in this Mishnah, he made another 10 tables and another 10 menorahs. Now, here we're coming to a bit of a difficulty, which is a crucial question. I wanted to print out a picture. Those who've got Azkar will already have a picture of the basic picture of what the Beis Hamikdash should look like. What you had was, I'm talking about the Beis Hamikdash that Shlomo built now, 60 amos long, 20 was the Kodesh HaKadoshim, 40 was the Kodesh. Now, both the Shulchan and the Menorah and the Mizbeach were inside that 40 amos, the 40 amos length that you had left. They were all after 20 amos. You had 20 amos, and then the last 20 amos had the Shulchan, Menorah, etc. Now, if you're going to put 10 tables, how are you going to line them up? That is the question. Where exactly do the 10 tables go? The more big... What? The wall in the Kodesh, that's right. The wall in the Kodesh. The Gemara Menachos tells us, and this is how we pass them, that they were actually doubled over. That means 5 tables per row, all going from east to west. You must remember, it's one of the hardest things that children struggle with. We always daven to the east, and we always imagine east is more Kodesh. In the Beis Hamikdash, which side was more Kodesh? West, right? It always went east to west. The Kodesh HaKadoshim was in the west, right? If you would bow down in the Beis Hamikdash, which direction would you bow down to? To the west, always to the west. Except if you were behind the Beis Hamikdash, then you that's right. Then you would bounce east. But most of the place was to the west. In the Beis Hamikdash, the tables were east to west, and that's the next discussion of the Gemara. Another discussion was, what did you do with these tables? One man says they did nothing with these tables. The other man says they used to use them sometimes. There's a third shit in the Shodim that they used to use them every week, which meant that they actually put lechem aponim on all the tables. Can you imagine what a job it was? Okay. This is what we'll discuss now. Asol shulchanos also Shlomo. Shlomo Melech made 10 tables. 5 on the right, 5 on the left. You can't say 5 north, 5 on the south. But the shulchan has to be in the north. That means like this. Imagine the table. This is north, by the way, because if that's east, that's north. So imagine that's the table. So that I say to the right and to the left, I don't mean to the right and left of the room, which would then make it that was on the southern side. That's no good. But to right and left of the table, right of the table. But all these tables on the northern side of the room. Is that clear? Is everything clear about this? It's a shame not to get it clear. The pasuk says to the right and to the left. Now, if you say to the right and left of the room, so one side, another side, the problem is the table has to be all on the north. The answer is it's the right and the left of the table, not of the room. So you've got 5 tables on the right, 5 tables on the left, but it's all on the northern side of the room. Says the Gemara, Afar became a Masada B'Shel Moshe B'Levad. He only used Moshe Rabbeinu's table. Shnemas HaShulchan Asher Olav Lechem Aponim. Rabbi so Yehuda Steinberg Kulan Noyam Masada. Shnemas HaShulchan Nois B'Aleim Lechem Aponim. It says in the plural, and all of them had Lechem Aponim. Tani Mizrach Maven Yisunin Divrei Rabbi. They put them from east to west. Whereas Rabbi Shimon Omer Tzafar V'Doim on Yisunin. They did it from north to south. That means they put the table starting on the northern corner, going all the way south. It says what? If you say east to west, it's all good because you did every table was all in the northern side. And that's no good. So when there's a shulchan bedorim top of Yudches Medalef, and that's no good. You can't have that because you're going to have them overlapping each other. If you did the tables north-south, you're going to end up the table and the shulchan and the benah overlapping. Why? Because each table, does anybody know how long each table was? 2 amos. It's a pasuk in Parshas Truma. So it was 2 amos long each table. So if you say they were north to south, even if you started the far north, since the whole distance from north to south was only 20 amos, you ended up having tables going past where the menorah was, because the menorah was 2.5 amos away from the wall, and that's no good. It was 2.5 amos away from the north. Was on the south. That means what happened was you actually had the first 20 amos as you walked into the kodesh was completely empty. Then you came to the Mizbeach Hazov, which was in the middle of the room in terms of north-south, and just past the middle of the room, east-west. And then afterwards, you would go on your right, a bit further along, on your right and your left, you would have the shulchan and the menorah. It was a third of the house. Why is that considered a third of the house if it's only 20 amos in? Does anybody know the answer? Very, very good. Because if you include the Kodesh Kodshim was 20 amos, the Kodesh was 40 amos. A third of 60 is 20. So it was half of the Kodesh. It was a third of the entire room of the Kodesh and the Kodesh Kedoshim together. So it was 20 amos after you went in a third or a half, depending if you include the Kodesh Kedoshim, just the Kodesh. Says the Gemara, Es Menurs also Shtem. We made 10 different Menurs. Shenema, it says, the Yasam Menurs says, of Es Kvishbot, Vita Hashem, Cholish Min, Cholish Mismol. Ein Tema, Cholish Mismol, Cholish Mismol. You can't say 5 north, 5 in the south. But in Menur, Kesher Adom, Shtemas Menur, Nechach, Shulchan, Nechach, Mishkot, Timon, has been in the south. Matan, Cholish Min, Cholish Mismol, Cholish Min, Menur, also Shlomosh, Cholish Mismol. Afa became the Yamadia, Shlomosh, Belvad, Shenema, Menur, says, of the Yisroel, Be'ev. He would only light Moshe Rabbeinu's menorah, not the rest. So we would only kol anoyim marish the most menorahs in the same levam kemishpot if they had vir zov sogu v'aperch v'aneos from a kachayim. V'amkachayim zov, everything was red at a gov. Michlo is zov hein. Pasuk says they were all completely gold. The Gemara over here dashes the word michlois hein kilu zov v'shal Moshe. They finished the gold. There was no gold left. What happened was that they used up so much gold in the preparation of the menorahs, there was no gold left. The Gemara Menachos says, can that be that there was no gold? Yes. Oh, we'll see. The Gemara explains in a minute how there was no gold left. There was no gold left. The Gemara says here that there was no gold left. The Gemara Menachos says, doesn't mean no gold literally. It means none of the very, very good quality gold. There was different kinds of gold. There's a certain kind of gold which was such a good quality gold that when it was on the market, nobody would try and sell any other kind of gold because there would be no takers. In fact, the Gemara says it was gold that closed off the market. That gold was completely consumed in the process of making them know. And as you ask, how is it possible to use up all the gold? It was just one block. So the Gemara says, it would take 1,000 kikah of gold, and put them into a furnace with sinat shu mamidon alechot. So what he did was, he would refine it and refine it and refine it until it was only 1,000th of the size that it started off with. So therefore, the amount of gold that went into the menorah was 1,000 times as much as the real weight of the gold which was there. And therefore, by the time he finished with all the gold that he made, the menorah and all the menorahs around it, there was no gold left. All the gold was consumed because he kept refining it and refining it. Tanya. Moshe Rabbeinu's menorah was once, it was once one dinner, which is a small coin, too heavy. They put it in a fiery smelting pot 80 times, and it didn't get even 1 gram less. The more asks it as a kasha. Here we just said that you took the gold and you put it in you put it in dozens and dozens of times until it got to 1,000, a tenth of 1% of its original weight and volume. And here it says that Moshe Rabbeinu's menorah was a tiny bit too heavy. They made it go through the process 80 times and it didn't lose any weight. It's a kasha. That's what answer. Then what happens is you can purify it and purify it and purify it until it gets to the actual essence of gold. Once it gets to the essence of gold, it is impossible to actually dilute it anymore, to refine it anymore. So let's see. Says well, Yos is correct. Like Levi said, until it becomes clear gold, have a chosas sagin. It loses a lot as you purify it. It loses a lot. Means once it gets to the most refined gold, it doesn't lose anything at all. I'd like to at least do the next Mishnah, as I said. Yes. What happened was, with time, it's got other pieces stuck to it. It means, I don't know. Here's an interesting question. Okay. Sheshes the Shofar said Mikdash, there were 13 stocker boxes in the Mikdash. Let's get it clear. Because of that, Takin Chadatin, the first one said new Shekalim. That's Shekalim of the new year. The next one said V'taklin Atikin, last year's Shekalim. Let's say you forgot to give a master a shekel, you bought the new one. Kinin, that's pairs of birds. The Gemara explain each one in detail, but birds of Oila. Eitzim. Let's say you wanted to donate wood, you would put money in that box, and then they would use it to buy wood. Levoino, if you wanted to donate Levoino by itself, you've donated money, it was for Levoino. Nowadays, go to some shuls, they have like 4 different stocker boxes. One for the Sfoy, one for the building things. So this one, they had 13. Each one was for a different purpose. Sometimes the person felt you want to give Levoino, so you want to give wood. Zov lekaporos is gold. Some said kaporos was to cover the walls of the Beis in gold, and some say kaporos mean for kelim. The kohanim used to wipe their fingers on the cups. So all kelim in the Beis were called kaporos. You'll see in Malachim, they were called kaporos. It means if you want to donate gold, they should have gold kelim. Shishon and Nadava, there were 6 different ones that were for the exact same purpose. More described, right? You need 6 stocker boxes for the same purpose. The Gemara explains. The Mishnah explains that. Every single year you have to give a new machzah shekel. If you didn't bring last year, shekel l'shana haba. So then you bought the next year. Some explain that even if you forgot that year and you were after Sukkot, if you remember, they collected the money 3 times a year: 2 weeks before Pesach, 2 weeks before Shavuos, 2 weeks before Sukkot. So if you came already 2 weeks after Sukkot, after the 2-week process, so then you would put it in the old box because you already missed it. Okay. Oh, kinin hein tovin. That was doves. Because that's pigeons. Kulan oila is Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda held that both of these boxes were for birds of oila. No. Kinin echad chatas vechad oila. Because the oila kulan oilos. Normally, a person who wants to donate a korban brings an oila. Sometimes a person needs to bring 1 chatas, 1 oila. When does the person need to bring 1 chatas, 1 oila? Does anybody know? A Yoleda, somebody who gave birth, or Zava, or that was more complicated because he would bring another one. Somebody says, I want to give wood to the Beis Hamikdash without specifying how much. And you must give at least 2 wooden planks. You can't just give 1 plank or half a plank. You have to give 2 wooden planks. If you promise to give frankincense, you must give less than the kometz. That's a fistful. Zov, if you promise to give gold without specifying how much, within the Zov, you won't give less than the golden coin. Shishon and Nadava Mayosim, but what do they do with it in Nadava? Lokhin ba oilos by oilos habosel Hashem, the meat would go on the mizbeach, but oilos lekohanim, the kohanim would get the skins. Zeh medrash doash yoda kohen gadol osham Hashem. The pasuk says that osham goes to Hashem. Now the problem is that the pasuk also says in that same pasuk that it goes like kohanim you, that the osham goes to kohanim. So the question is, does it go to Hashem or does it go to kohanim? How does it make sense? Zekal. If Apostle Hashem ba'us lekohanim. Nimsu shtei ksuvim kayamin. Both psukim exist. Oshem la'Hashem, Oshem lekohanim. Remember, kesef Oshem, kesef lechatos, lo yuvu Hashem lekohanim you. Basically, if a person bought common chatos and Oshem, he had spare money. How would you have spare money? Anybody know? How would you have spare money for chatos Oshem? One simple way is, let's say he thought a chatos costs £100. Sets aside £100. He finds it costs £50. Alternatively, he lost his chatos and he bought a new one, whatever it may be. What does he do? He gives it as a korban to Hashem. The pasuk says, chatos kohanim go to the kohanim, chatos Oshem go to the kohanim. The answer is not a contradiction. You would buy with it oilos. The oilos would go on the mizbeach, but the skins would go to the kohanim. So therefore, the kohanim would benefit and the mizbeach would benefit. So that way, you'd be behind both psukim. It would go to Hashem and it would go to the kohanim. We're up to the Gemara, Tanya, and the Mitzvah tomorrow. We'll be finishing a parak and continuing on. There'll be a siyum tomorrow. If you remember, if anybody remembers, it's a schus to bring something for. I think it is interesting. Anybody know about pure gold? Anybody learn about it?
The silver can't be too pure. That's why now it's something. I understand that. It's pure silver. It can't be. That's what's never.
He's asking. Chaim's asking. I don't understand. If the gold was too pure, it would be very soft, and the manure would bend.
Silver's never 100%.
Maybe not.